On episode 337 of the 40 Plus Fitness podcast, we meet Eric Stein and discuss his book, Ketogenic Catastrophe. You can find the full show notes for this episode at 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/337. Have you decided you're ready to make a change? To reclaim your health and fitness? The 40 Plus Fitness podcast is here for you. I'm your host, Alan Meisner. I'm an NSAM certified personal trainer with a specialization in corrective exercise and fitness nutrition. Let me be your coach as you find your way on your health and fitness journey. All right, let's go. Our guest today has authored many books, including the one we're going to talk about today, Ketogenic Catastrophe. He found a passion helping others after he cured his own IBS, gum disease, and insomnia using the Paleo Diet and ketogenic eating. Really cool guy. I know you're going to enjoy this interview. With no further ado, here's Eric Stein. So Eric, welcome to 40 Plus Fitness.
Hey, thanks for having me, Alan. Great to be here.
The title, Ketogenic Catastrophe, I really could take that one of two different ways. One is disaster pants kind of style, like what you were going after was what are some of the mistakes that we make when we're trying to get into ketosis, and why do most people fail doing this? And then the other would be like, oh, wow, are people having bad experiences with keto? And the truth of the matter is keto is not for everybody, but it is a tremendous tool for weight loss. And what I found is just for dietary freedom. I got into ketosis on accident. And for those that aren't fully familiar with what ketosis is, it's basically where your body starts learning how to burn fat rather than sugar for energy. And because you're eating predominantly a higher fat diet and not many carbs, your body just gets more comfortable with that using ketones as a fueling system. And what I found, I stumbled on it because I was doing paleo. My version of paleo was eating more of the healthy fats. So I was eating a lot of avocado and fish and beef, and just, as a result of filling up on the fat, wasn't eating a lot of much anything else. And most of the vegetables I was eating were whole food, fibrous vegetables like asparagus and broccoli and spinach. So I wasn't getting a lot of carbs. And then I just noticed my breath was a little, sour, more so than not. And I noticed that my body was burning a lot of body fat all of a sudden. I had plateaued. Paleo dropped about 15 pounds, and then keto took off about, I'd say, 45 pounds in just a few months. And so I fell into it. I figured out what it was. I'm like, what's going on with my body? Why am I suddenly losing all of this fat? And why am I smelling this way? And then I got into it and I was like, okay, that's what that is. And that's why that's what's happening. And it's become more of kind of a seasonal lifestyle for me now because I've lost most of the weight that I wanted to ever lose. I got my body where I wanted to for what I wanted, and then I'm good. But in the book, you're actually talking about the mistakes that keep people from doing this. And I think that's really important because I was reading a study, and it was a Harvard doctor that had done this study. And they found that the high fat, low carb diet helped people lose more weight than the people who ate the low fat, high carb diet. But then in the end, his conclusion was, but it's so hard to eat this high fat diet that we're just going to keep prescribing the low fat diet. And I just, thumped my hands, hit my head, and I'm like, oh my gosh. But it's not simple. I mean, there are some mistakes people make, and that's kind of what your book is getting into. Is what are those mistakes that most people make that would keep them from being successful with this, and what are the tips and tricks and things that we can do to get past them?
Yeah, that's basically what I've covered. And I had a lot of stumbling when I first started with this whole keto diet thing, and this was basically my attempt to share with whoever wants to read it, all of the mistakes that I went through. I think it was Warren Buffett says, you can learn from your own mistakes, but you don't have to. You can learn from other people's mistakes. So my goal with this whole thing was to just share everything that I personally went through, and in hopes that it will help others just become more enlightened about the whole keto thing and just get through it, because it can be difficult. Like you said, it's not the easiest thing to start. But what people should definitely take from this whole thing is that after you do it for for a while, after you get comfortable with it, it becomes much easier too. And much, you can do it seasonally like you do as well, or you don't have to do it all the time. So it's just, this was my attempt to really just help people feel better in the long run.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing is, I don't have any kind of insulin resistance, or any metabolic problems. So for me, keto is just a kind of way to have clarity, to feel better, to have freedom from food, because I can go a day without eating and I don't panic because my blood sugar is going to crash or something. So keto became very comfortable for me, but I don't do it all year round because there's periods of time when I want to drink beer and go tailgating and enjoy my, my life, things that I'm going to do because
I'm
going to
have fun still.
Yeah, I'm going to go Thanksgiving with my mother. I'm going to go do New Year's Eve with my wife. And so since I know I'm going to have that period of time, I just plan around it and say, okay, that's my time to go off keto. I'm not going to feel as good. I'm going to have as much fun as I can. I'm going to make good selections. So I do drink the higher quality beers. But beyond all that, when it's time to go back into my season of famine, so to speak, I get into it. And and so that's why I think a lot of these, a lot of folks think it's a lifestyle. Yes. Once you get into it, then you have to stay in it. And that's not entirely true for everybody. That's why I think that this book is particularly poignant, because if you go in and out of ketosis on a regular basis, you're going to deal with these things. And the first one is what you call the biggest mistake. And I agree with you. Do you mind talking about what you think the biggest mistake is that most people will make when they're trying to get into ketosis?
Sure. Yeah. The biggest mistake by far is, it's very simple. It's just giving up. If you can imagine like training for a marathon, let's say, and you do all this prep work and you get up to the race day, you're feeling great. You start the marathon, you get through the first mile, the 7th mile, the 12th mile, you're getting through it. And all of a sudden you get to mile 25, right before the finish line, and you just give up. That's what a lot of people do, is they get so close to the finish line, building this metabolic flexibility, this ability to burn fat instead of sugar. And right before they get there, they just say, you know what, I'm done. And it's not that to put it back to the marathon runner, it's not like the marathon runner couldn't finish. He just decided, well, I'm just not going to finish the race today. And so many people run into that because it's difficult to get going in the beginning. It's difficult because your body needs to kind of, produce the enzymes and all the wiring that's required to burn fat for fuel. And there's an adjustment period. But once you get good at it, it becomes much, much easier. And over the long run, obviously, works out a lot better. But the biggest mistake that people make, they just can't kind of sack up and just get through the first little part here. And, give most people more credit here. A lot of keto diet books and a lot of keto diet advice is not the greatest advice out there. They tell people that, okay, just cut your carbs down to 20 grams of carbs, even if you're eating, buckets of sugar each day, and then just do keto. And, you're going to run into huge problems if you just make an abrupt switch like that. So to kind of lend credit to everybody that's tried and failed before, maybe you got some bad advice too, but absolutely the biggest mistake is just, not pushing through and getting to the other side. Because once you get to the other side, then it just becomes much easier. Even if you have those cheat days, like you say, you go have a couple beers. Once you get back on the train, it's not nearly as hard to get going again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Because I think the difference, and the way I kind of look at it is, when you're talking about the marathon, the runner knows that there's only 1.2 miles left to go in this race. They're at mile 25 marker. There's only a mile 0.2 to complete this race. Unfortunately, with ketosis, you don't have that mile marker to tell you that it's that close. And so I think that's where a lot of that quit comes in. I remember I was in the Army and I was going through air assault school. And at the end of air assault school, you do this 25-mile run, and you're carrying your M16 and your M boots, and you do this 25-mile run. And each of the units has people in there. So my unit was there, and they were cheering us all on. I was a front runner. I knew there was one guy in front of me. I just didn't know how far he was in front of me. So I asked one of the guys, I'm like, how far is he ahead of me? Just tell me. And they said, oh, he's too far. You're never going to catch him. And so I come around the corner and realize that, I've got maybe half a mile to go, and he's only 100 yards ahead of me. But by that
Wow.
time, I had shut my mind down to the possibility that I could do this. And therefore, I ended up coming in second. And so I only say that because it's probably closer than you think it is. Once you get
Yeah.
into this and you're starting to really have that struggle, look for the things that are going to motivate you to keep going. And so you do talk in the book about measurement, and I do think that's important. The urine strips are really good when you first get started because they're going to allow you to see that ketones are starting to build up in there, and they're color coded, so you can see it happening. And since your body doesn't know how to use the ketones effectively, you're peeing them out. Eventually, the
Right.
urine sticks won't be any good for you because your body's using those ketones. And now you're going to have to be looking to your blood and your breath to understand if you're in ketosis. But for the most part, you are, and you can feel it and you know it. And so I agree with you. I think, as people are going, just realize this, just push the next step. Just take that next step. Just keep at it just a little bit longer and you'll get there. It's a dip. And once you get past that dip, you're going to enjoy what you've done.
Sure. Yeah. And you can always test and tweak things along the way too. It's not, you don't have to stick yourself into like a rigid structure. If something's not working for you, you can always pivot and, try something new. Maybe increase your exercise a little or decrease your exercise a little, if you're working too hard. I mean, just you can always play with the different approaches and find out what fits for you. But keep pushing forward. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's another important thing is when we look at you had this as mistake number 8 in the book, and it's individuality. And you had talked about how the basic advice is 20 grams of carbs, and then they kind of stop there. I know from experience working with clients that if you get down to 20 and you stay at 20, you will get into ketosis. But there's some people that can go probably as high as maybe even 100 grams of carbs because they're athletic and they're doing things. And there are other people that can get to 50. You're going to have a carb threshold in there, and it's going to be individual to you. You're going to have nutritional needs that are based on your environment and everything else. Can you talk a little bit about bioindividuality and how you've seen it work for or against people who are trying to get into ketosis?
Sure. Yeah, that phrase actually was originally coined by the Institute of Integrative Nutrition. They're actually the folks that came up with that. And it basically, at a high level, it just means we're all different, right? Some people can eat as a vegan diet and they feel great, and it seems to work really well for them. Some people, like myself, they feel awful. I've tried to do the vegan thing and it doesn't work for me at all. And, I had no energy. It was not something that really worked for me. And, we always got to think about where we came from, right? Like what is our family's, bloodline been eating for the past 10 generations, right? That's going to play a role in how we metabolize things, what we're used to eating, what our genetics are used to. So everybody is so different. And this is especially true for the carbohydrate threshold. I mean, I've talked to people who could not get into ketosis until they got down to that 20 gram of carbohydrate. Now, me personally, I was more along the lines of I could get back into ketosis after eating like 80 to 100 grams of carbs the night for dinner one night, and then the next day around lunchtime be back into a ketogenic state. And all the books that I was reading about this, they said that's impossible. It's going to take you days. You have to do this. You have to do that. And really, it's just about finding where you sit, where you feel best, and what works for you. And the mistake that people make is having this mindset that everybody's the same. It's like this cookie cutter thing. And it's definitely not true. Actually, there's a great story. I used to, one of my roommates from many years ago, he and I lived together, and this is right around the time when I was trying to clean up my diet and try to lose the weight that I had been gaining. And living with him, I watched him every day just eat fast food. And it was just constant, drinking sodas, drinking beers all the time, and doing whatever he wanted. And he stayed lean. I had no idea. Here I was even trying to eat healthier at the time, but I was still gaining and gaining and gaining. And I just watched him not gain a pound. And it was very frustrating. And, really killed a lot of my motivation, because it's like, well, why me? Why can't I be like him? But really, at the end of the day, it's bioindividuality. It just means that none of us are going to be the same. Individual results may vary, right? I mean, that phrase is so perfect for many different things in life, but especially people who are trying to ketogenic diet.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to really look at yourself and what you're going through, because everybody's going to be different. Somebody might lose, 30 pounds in a month doing the keto diet, and you may sit there and lose 1.5 pounds. But it could be just because your body is working on fixing other things first, or whatever reason genetically that you're going to be slower to lose the weight. But we have a lot of similarities, but at the base level, we have a lot of differences as well.
It's part of it's genetics. Part of it is your hormone mix. I know a lot of people are coming at this metabolically damaged. I was reading another book that they actually said that the baby boomers, which is, I'm just shy. I'm an ex-gen, but 50% of baby boomers have some form of metabolic syndrome. And I'm just trying to wrap my mind around that.
That's a big number.
It's a huge number. And I was like, and so we're approaching this because we want to get healthy. And that just means that, like you said, your roommate may have had no problem whatsoever. You might run into him today and it caught up with him. But
sure.
At the same time, yeah, we're okay. I figured. It's not a happy story, but it's a story.
No, it did. Yeah.
But, I think that the core of this is there's that individual that can, smoke cigarettes from the time they were 14 years old and they're 104 and they still smoke. And then there's the individual who got lung cancer in their 40s after smoking only 20 years. So we're all going to have our own individual path. And I think the good thing about kind of knowing that is if you can stop comparing yourself to others and then just recognize that what you're doing is positive for yourself, you're going to have a lot better mindset going into this whole thing.
Yeah, you nailed it right there. The comparison to others is a very difficult thing. It's something I struggled with tremendously when I first started out on this journey. Yeah, you definitely just want to be sure to remember that what you're doing is for yourself, and you're going to be different than everybody else. I mean, there's probably people that are going to react the same, but just keep in mind what you're doing it for.
Yeah. And another big area where mindset comes to play is what you call mistake number 5, the social trap. I know when I first started this, and realized I was eating this way and wanted to keep eating this way, my wife kind of thought I was out of my mind. And she said, there's no way. Because she had seen me try other things and then she saw me try this. And she's like, okay. She said, I understood the paleo thing. She said, I do not understand this. She said, I can't do that. But she has since turned around. I took her to Keto Fest and she met some people and she listened to a few talks. And so she now knows about keto and for the most part, we'll eat keto most of the time. So, but that's not always the case. Some people are going to look at you like you're insane. How do I deal with that? I'm going into this and someone says, like you said in book, I go to order my burger because that's what there is. And I said, just wrap mine in lettuce and I don't want the bread. And, you see that look in their eyes and
you get the looks. The looks come to you, and it can depend on the group of people you're with as well. Because me personally, I had some ruthless friends. We would kind of joke with each other and make fun of each other, but then it can be difficult when you continue to do this thing, or you pass up on the beer. I remember sitting at a table at a restaurant and doing the lettuce wrap burger and just getting them like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing that? And what that elicits in a lot of people, and I know this because it happened to me, is almost a fear to do it. You almost want to, the next time you hang out with everybody, you want to just be like everybody else, right? You don't want to be kind of out of the crowd. We, as humans, we want to be a part of the group. It feels safe. We want to be like everybody else. So to have that situation where you're walking into like a wedding or something, or you're going out with your friends and maybe you're going to an Italian restaurant, or the bread bowl comes around somewhere, and you're put in that precarious situation where you have to make your decision now. The bread's coming to you and you have to make the choice, and the people are looking at you. the mistake that people make is falling victim to that social pressure, because it's, again, going back to, being worried about what other people are thinking of you. And it's a very real mistake that most keto books and most books that are written about the keto diet just kind of glaze over. But it's such an important piece of this, because we are social creatures, right? I mean, we thrive on being social. I personally love being social. But it was a difficult transition to get over that fear of what other people are thinking of you. And it can be one of the most difficult things. It can be actually the one thing that will stop you. I mean, if you go, maybe you have a group of friends that, there's like 6 of you, and, everybody's overweight, let's just say. And all of a sudden you guys are going out to dinner and you start passing on the bread bowl. People are going to look at you funny. And, they might not even want you to do that, because they want you like, hey, whoa, where do you think you're going? We're all in this together, that kind of thing. But the social aspect of it is such a huge piece. And I recommend that people, before they go somewhere, let's say you're going out to dinner or you're going to, some sort of party, and the temptation is going to be there, but you're not ready to start doing the cheat days yet. Visualize it, walk yourself through the scenario, imagine yourself passing as the bread bowl comes to you. And then, you're going to have a lot higher chance of success, because you've already got like the mental rep, right? You've already kind of done it once in your head. Oh, no, thank you. It's going to be easier when game time comes around. But yeah, the social aspect of it is such a huge piece, especially if you're a very kind of like an extrovert. You like to go out, you have a lot of friends. People can be judgy, and it's very powerful to know going into this that why you're doing it, right? The reasons you're doing it for yourself, and to understand that it's okay for other people to have opinions. It's okay for other people to think what you're doing is crazy. Some people even say it's dangerous, if you can believe that. But just, remember why you're doing it. And when the time comes and you have that social pressure, to be prepared for it is going to make you more successful.
Yeah. And I think you just hit on something that I want to emphasize here this is your why. This is why you're doing this. And you need to keep that top of mind as you go into this. So yes, the bread bowl comes around and you just pass the bread without taking a piece, and someone comments on it. Fairly simple. You can say, I just got my A1C in and it's high. I'm pre-diabetic, and I need to change how I eat. And when they recognize this is not about you being thinner and more attractive than them, this is actually something you're doing for your health, it does change the conversation. You can tell them, I can't have the simple carbs anymore. I can't have the beer anymore because my A1C is too high and I need to get it down. And I don't want to use medication to do that. And,
just to touch on that one thing here that came to my mind is a lot of people, once they've done keto and lost weight, want to continue to do it. And you can still run into situations where, you don't have I'm not pre-diabetic. I don't need to lose any weight. And, it becomes easier to just say, I just feel better. I feel better not doing this, or I feel better, passing on the bread bowl. So there's all kinds of other, like down the road when you don't have those things to lean on, like I need to lose weight, or I'm not feeling well, or, I'm sick for some reason. It's just, there's other aspects of the social trap that can come up, but just like you said, you keep in the front of your mind, why you're doing it.
Yeah. And I call that the crabs in the bucket. And if you've ever seen crabs none of the crabs can get out of the bucket because the other crabs are pulling the crab down to get on top of it. And so the crabs can't get out of the bucket. Just realize that's what's going on. If people keep harassing you about what your food choices are, it's working for you. You know why you're doing this. You just don't even, at that point, just stop participating in the food conversation with them, because they're not looking out for your best interest. And I know that's hard and easier to say than to do, but you have to have this mindset, as I said, going into this, to say, this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. Now, the other thing that I wanted to get into, because you mentioned this earlier, and this is one you called mistake number 17, so much advice out there tells people, particularly during the adaptation period, to not exercise. And I don't entirely agree with this. I think, we talk about bio individuality. I think some people can continue to do their workouts. I know I did and didn't have a problem in the world. So maybe I'm unique and that's great. But I believe people can still get the benefits of exercise during that period of time. They don't have to forego it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and I think it probably goes back to that bio individuality thing. I know I was reading Mark Sisson's book, The Keto Reset Diet, and I was listening to one of his podcasts. He was talking about how he recommends people not exercise during the adaptation period because for some it can be difficult. Like if you've been consuming a lot of sugar and you're metabolically damaged, the process of adaptation can be difficult. And he recommends that you just kind of rest through it, which, there's validity there. I think everybody needs to just kind of take a look and see how they're feeling. Now, me personally, I think it's a huge mistake to not exercise while you're doing the keto thing, because just me having personally gone through it, exercise is so much more enjoyable when you're doing keto. I have more strength and more energy than I know what to do with when I'm in that keto state. And that being said, if you're just looking at this for, I just need to lose some weight or I just need to do this, you don't have to exercise. But I think it's a huge mistake to not add on that this component of it to get your blood flowing. And even if it's just the most basic exercise, like, power walking or, going up and down some stairs, doing some body weight stuff, push-ups, sit-ups, clean your house vigorously. It doesn't, we think of exercise as it has to be in a gym, but there's so many different ways to get your heart pumping, get your body moving. It's just going to only compound the results that you get. So if you can do the keto thing and not exercise, but again, I think it's a big mistake to not do that. And when you realize it too, when you actually get into that keto state, you're burning ketones for energy, you'll have just this incredible outpouring of motivation too. You will want to go exercise and you'll have more energy. I know it sounds funny that, people think that if they exercise, they're going to be tired and they're going to have less energy. And it's actually the opposite. You exercise and you will have more energy. Kind of that, you don't use it, you lose it thing. And then along with what I've noticed too, is that the more that you exercise, the greater the mental clarity that you'll get as well. I'm not sure exactly the mechanics behind why, but I've noticed that I've become much more mentally clear. It's almost like you've been wearing a pair of prescription glasses your whole life that weren't even supposed to be yours. Like they were the wrong prescription. You just suddenly take them off and the world just looks clearer. Or like, you get in your car in the morning and the window's fogged up and you turn the defroster on. That's what happens as you keep going through this. And exercise, I think, is just a tool to accelerate these benefits and really just compound them for everybody.
Yeah. So there's two bits there and I agree with you. I don't think there's a reason to forgo exercise unless, yes, if you're metabolically damaged and you know that this could be a problem for you, then take it easy and don't stress yourself. But the reality of life is that, our muscles and our liver basically hold roughly about 90 minutes to 2 hours of moderate intensity work. So when folks are running marathons, they bonk it at mile 18 because that's about the time that the glycogen that's in their muscles and their liver starts to run out. You have that in your muscles and your liver all the time. That's like glycogen's there all the time to fire off for energy. So doing moderate intensity work, lifting weights, doing body weight work, walking, maybe even some jogging, that's going to use that glycogen. And now you are still taking in some carbs. We're not complete carnivore, zero carb here, but you are taking in some carbs and your body has the capacity to take some of the protein you eat and some of the fat and actually turn it into glycogen that you can then use to restore what you need for your muscles and your liver. So your body's going to still do that. I just think what you force your body to do, if you do keep your activity at a good steady pace, is you actually force the adaptation a little bit faster. That's my opinion. Again, I don't have any scientific proof that that's the case, but I do know when I have clients cut their sugar back and I have them walk in a fasted state, they lose weight faster. And so that's happening. That's happening in their bodies because it's forcing them to use more of the glucose that they are eating. It's forcing them to use the glycogen in their muscles. They've got to restore that. So that process just starts working for them. On the mental clarity note, I think, I don't know if you've read the book Spark, but this was an excellent book that talked about exercise and cognitive health. And they found that just having the kids do a PE class in the morning before school helped their grades immensely. Their test scores went up. They just had more clarity in class. They were more focused in class. So there is an exercise neurological connection that you're going to get clarity from exercising. And yes, you're going to get mental clarity from powering your brain on ketones. And so I think there can be a kind of a multiplicative effect there if you're doing both.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That makes perfect sense. That's very interesting to hear about the kids. I can, just kind of seeing my path and how my mental state has changed over the years now. And yeah, I think that would be just brilliant to make sure that kids did PE before school. If they did PE before school and then didn't get Rice Krispie cereal before school, that would probably help a lot.
That'd be a lot better.
Okay, so I look back on my upbringing. Yeah, that's what I had.
Yeah, it was a standard American diet, and it was what our government was telling us to eat, and that kind of goes to this whole thing: is that ketogenic diet it's not new; it's been around for a long time, but it's just starting to get to a point where people are recognizing that they can get great health benefits from it, they can get weight loss from it, and the people that are on it become evangelists for it. So it's a growing trend as a way of eating. It's not that it's better than being a vegan or vegetarian or anything else. It's just a way of eating, and you should kind of take it with that it can benefit you, but it's not for everybody, as I said earlier. But it's something that I think if you're wanting to lose some weight or you're concerned about your metabolic numbers, A1C is high, you're pre-diabetic. There's been some great results using this, and again, most people that get onto it just feel great. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Now, the book is called Ketogenic Catastrophe. Eric, if someone wanted to get in touch with you, wanted to learn more about the book, learn what you're doing, because you and your wife are doing a lot of great stuff over there, where would you like for me to send them?
Well, my wife and I run the blog called ancestraljunkie.com, and that's where we'll be posting some articles. And, we've been a bit inactive lately. We have our son now, and things have been a bit hectic, but we're back on ancestraljunkie.com. And then you can find my other books. I've written a few others on Amazon. If you search for Ketogenic Catastrophe, my name will pop up. And there's a couple other things. If you go to the blog, you can get a couple, like a free meal plan, a free grocery guide, and some other goodies for just visiting. And we have a nice little newsletter that goes out. Today's Friday, so it's a Friday Faves. We send out a weekly newsletter where we'll kind of give you our top 5 like articles and neat products that helped us or quotes that were motivating us, that kind of stuff. So you can get us at ancestraljunkie.com and or on Amazon is where my other books are located.
Okay. Well, this is going to be episode 337. So you can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/337, and I'll be sure to have links to all of those available there. So again, Eric, thank you so much for being a part of 40 Plus Fitness.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate you having me, and thank you so much for what you're doing for the the health community and just the world at large here. You're really making a difference. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast. I'm really glad you were here. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had with Eric. Anyone that's trying to use the ketogenic lifestyle as a way of eating often finds that they make mistakes. And Eric's put together a really good book to kind of talk you through how to manage those mistakes. So do check that out, Ketogenic Catastrophe. And I have a link to that in the show notes if you're interested. And if you enjoyed today's show, I really would appreciate if you would go to the review section on your app or go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review, which will take you to an iTunes page. leave a review for the podcast. I really read each and every one of these reviews. The ratings and reviews help us get noticed out there. So really, really important. Please do take the time to give us a review. It takes you a few minutes, and it can mean the world to someone finding the podcast and finding health. So 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/review. And thank you for that. A little bit on a personal note, I've kind of indicated over the course of the last few episodes that my wife and I are traveling around looking for potential retirement slash downscale life. It looks like we're going to settle on Panama. That's not set in stone at this point, and it might not be a permanent move, but we are looking to potentially within the next 6 months sell our house and move out of the country, which will be a very different lifestyle. And it's a change that I'm doing because it'll reduce risk from stress, and it'll keep me kind of in a lower keel, slow the things down. Really looking forward to something like that. In looking at my health and fitness, that's the one area where I can get the most bang for the buck. That's my big rock, which, if you get into the wellness roadmap book, once I get that issued, you're going to learn a lot about how to identify those big rocks. And for me, stress is the kind of the next big rock that I need to deal with. I wanted to mention that I am setting up a mini Keto Fest. I know I talked about going to Keto Fest in July and doing a talk there. I'm going to do that talk again here at my home in Pensacola Beach, and that's going to be on October 5th. And right now we're looking at probably having it between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock p.m. on October 5th. There will be food provided. There is a small charge to cover off some of the cost of that food. But Carl Franklin from Keto Dudes is coming down here, and he'll also be giving a talk. And you'll be able to meet him here at the Mini Keto Fest in Pensacola Beach. So do check that out. You can go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Keto Fest. That's KETOFEST. So 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Keto Fest. And there you'll find a link to the Eventbrite page. We can only handle a certain number of people. I do have a nice size house, but we still are going to have to limit the number of people that come so everybody can enjoy the food and everybody can enjoy the talks. So you do want to go ahead and make sure you get yourself on that list. Go to 40plusfitnesspodcast.com/Keto Fest. Now on the book, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it's gone very, very well so far. I'm getting some blurbs back from folks, which basically are just reviews. They've seen the book and they felt compelled to help me market the book by writing some really cool, really nice things. And I'm humbled by that. But it's really coming together. Looking forward to spending the next week. I should get the proofs back from the editor. And at that point, I'll be able to sit down and batten down and spend some quality time on the book to just get that final finish in there. But we're getting really close to having everything locked down and ready to go. So I'm pretty excited about that. If you want to be a little bit more in the know, get a little bit more detail on how the book is going, you can go to wellnessroadmapbook.com. You can join the list and become a part of our launch team. The launch team is my go-to group. They're the folks that I'm going to share the most information about the book. I'll tell you a little bit about it on the podcast. Occasionally I'll mention it in the groups, but really if you want to be in the know about the book, when it's coming live, discounts, bonuses, all kinds of stuff that I'm going to be putting out there, you need to join the launch team. So go to wellnessroadmapbook.com and join the launch team today. Thank you. Next time on the 40 Plus Fitness Podcast, we meet Dr. Johnny Bowden and discuss his book, Smart Fat. Until then, have a happy and healthy week.